ask permission from the ancestors to allow us to share today. Connect with the bamboo and nature surrounding us with divine light. Activate your vital energy or your life force with breath through your oku, your na'au, your tummy, with divine light. You may even invite your loved ones. May we ask guidance as we share today. With light, akahai, loving kindness, with breath, and love, the peace of aloha. Please connect with the vibration of bamboo.
I also want to thank all of you for coming. And it's because of your coming out and being part of this gathering, it makes it a community, you know. And Mindful Hawaii is really about us creating a space together where people can come together and let their spiritual hair down, if you will. And I think that's what we need more and more of nowadays, because people have a hard time expressing and experiencing, the kindness and the compassion among people. And people don't listen to each other, actually. So what we need to do is we need to create a community, a place where people can come and experience that. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. Any questions so far? We got kind of slow in starting out because it's my fault anyway. So I'm sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut short my talk and I'm going to get into the meat of what we're here for today, and that is to hear from Michael Carroll. And as I introduce Michael, I want to also introduce Suzanne. Suzanne is a psychologist, and she has a practice, and she works with also youth at risk, right? Right? And so I think that's wonderful. So we had a nice conversation coming up. I used to work with youth at high risk before, and it's good fun working with them, but it's also a challenge, believe me. I think some of you know that we have been working on a project with Marina, and I think John has gone to training too with Margaret Waitley. And we'll be working on this project. We want to bring it to some fruition this year sometime. And so when Michael Carroll indicated he was going to come and join us today, I suggested to him that he use this opportunity, we use him for this opportunity for him to express his thoughts about spiritual warriorship. It's a very important idea. It's not an idea, but it's a practice. It's a way of living. And so I'm going to ask Michael to come up and sit here and please share with us your knowledge and the spirit. And Susanna, please join us there. And then when he's done doing a short wrap, we will have a community meeting with Michael. You can ask him questions and we'll have a conversation about anything you want to. And then we will close up the meeting with a short announcement by Marina about next month. And who our next guest will be. It's on your paper too, but we'll talk about that later. So Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, well, needless to say, this is a real honor for me and my wife Susanna to be sitting here. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Sensei, for inviting us to be here. Also to thank Tom Gamarino, one of our, who's sitting in the office, in the audience. He's a professor from Punahou High School, which was our original impetus for being here. We're doing a project with Punahou starting on Monday around visual storytelling. And it started off 2 years ago with that, and it's burgeoned into being here. And my wife and I got to travel on the Big Island for 8 days with some friends that hosted us. So this is really an exciting and an honor, and to be here with you is very touching. And I don't remember who the beautiful woman was who played the flute. What was her name? Yeah. That is so profound, right? To listen to that sound, and it evokes vast mind. It's almost impossible not to have a glimpse of being awake in listening to your flute. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I was invited to make some remarks on the topic of what I'm calling the noble path of the spiritual warrior. And the more I'm sitting here, I'm saying to myself, what do I know about this? But indeed, I have been very fortunate, as my wife has, to be trained for many, many years in warrior disciplines. And what I'd like to do today in our brief discussion is to explain a little bit about the style and tradition of the training that we've received, then go into some basic principles of spiritual warriorship according to this particular tradition, and then work with what we would consider the fundamental, most profound gesture of a spiritual warrior. And we should be able to achieve that in 15 minutes. Normally it takes years and years and years of training, but I'm trying to give you kind of an overview of this. So, and also I have to say that Susanna and I have been trying to learn more and more about the profound traditions of this land. And to a great degree we have been able to feel them physically, but not really gotten much instruction. So I mean, I kind of feel humble sitting up here going, let me tell you about warriorship on a magical world like this. I try to be as humble as possible in this land because I know very little, but I feel the profoundness of it. So with that said, just a little bit about the warrior path that Susanna and I are trained in. It's a Buddhist path. This is a Buddhist path, and there's a particular irony that I'll get into in a minute. Is Buddhist, which I don't even kill bugs. Warrior, what? How does that work? We'll get into that in a little bit. But there are traditions within the Buddhist history where warrior disciplines and Buddhist disciplines were able to mesh together very profoundly. One of the ones that you may be familiar with is in Japan with Zen and samurai. And there is a lot of very deep, profound teachings there. Also in India as well, early when the Buddha was teaching, he also would instruct warrior kings and warrior royalty. So it's not an unusual mix, though it's not primary. Many of the paths within, thank you. You don't have to hold my water. In any case, traditionally in Buddhism, you have the monastic. I think we're all familiar with monastic disciplines. You have cave dwellers, hermits, forest dwellers, a wide variety, householders, wide variety of lineages and lines of training. It's a very interesting time now I'll speak for myself, but for many of us in the West, where Buddhism is coming to the West, particularly Tantric Buddhism, which, I'm a Catholic and I look at, I've been studying Tantric Buddhism now for almost 50 years and I still look at it, I'm like, this is really weird stuff, But being able to sort of incorporate these traditions, which are very profound, has been a great honor, but it's difficult and it's a fragile time about how we incorporate these disciplines in Western culture. So that's the tradition that we come from. Now, the particular Tantric tradition of warriorship that I'll be sort of pulling from today and just going through some of these principles comes from a legend. In fact, it's the largest written epic in the world, which is the epic of Gesar of Ling. Gesar was a warrior king in Central Asia back probably around 900, 800, 900 AD kind of thing. And there have been literally thousands of stories and songs written about Gesar, which I would say probably 99% of them never happened, but they're like cool stories of bravery and warriorship and all that compassion and difficult moral issues to deal with. And for Tibetans and men and women of Central Asia, being educated in this warrior tradition and the stories is how children grew up hearing these stories. And this particular line of training this warrior training that we've been trained in comes from this line of Gesar of Leng. I know this is a little bit of inside baseball, but nonetheless, there's also a line of training called Shambhala, which is a very ancient body of teachings about a hidden kingdom in the Himalayas that is a legend of enlightened beings. I won't get into all the detail of that, but this particular warrior training of Gesar of Leng and the Shambhala training, teachings mingled into a body of what is called Nyingma teachings, inside baseball, that we have been trained in. So that's this background. And once again, it's a fragile time, taking this body of teachings from Central Asia and bringing it to a kid from Philadelphia. You know what I'm saying? Man, how does that work? How does that work? So hopefully it works okay. We'll see. So going to probably, at least in my estimation, one of the core elements here as a Buddhist is warrior. What? Why warrior? I mean, we know that many, particularly in the West, what we bring to the notion of warrior is aggression, and war, and harm, and violence, weaponry. And there's, at least for me, growing up, protesting the war in Vietnam, warriorship was not something I was ascribing to. But in this case, this is very powerful because what are we talking about in terms of spiritual warriorship? And it speaks to certain core impulses of a warrior, which has to do with chivalry, and nobleness, and bravery, and dignity, and how these dynamics have been embodied and handed down in warrior traditions. And that from a Buddhist point of view, paying attention to these qualities of being human and bringing them to their fullest measure is a key element of not only what it means to be a spiritual person, but as we were hearing from Sensei, according to the predictions in Tibet, these warrior disciplines are the key for what we're going through right now, which is called the Dark Age. So what we're talking about here in warriorship is the notion of discipline, sacrifice, chivalry, a sense of elevated nobleness versus aggression, macho-ness, cruelty. And how do we bring those alive in engaging our modern world? So that's kind of the background, but I'd now like to move into maybe somewhere between 3 and 6 key principles. Depends upon if I see everyone going like this. I know there will just be 3. Okay? But if everyone's still looking that way, we get to 6. We'll see. So in this tradition, there is a fundamental dynamic that defines warriorship that also is fundamental to spiritual development and becoming a fully realized spiritual human being. And that fundamental dynamic is fearlessness. It's fearlessness. What does it mean to live a fearless life as a human being? Typically, when we think of fearlessness, normally at this point I say, well, what do you think about fearlessness? But I won't do that. We think about like confronting threats, right? Or bravely going toward a conflict. Or sacrificing ourselves for the sake of others. I mean, if you're a mom or a dad, you know. I'll speak for myself. It's so much easier for me to die than my kid. Would make everything, if I had to choose, boom, it's very simple, right? The sense of sacrificing ourselves for others. So to some degree, this notion of fearlessness, I think we all have a sense of it, very naturally as human beings. But from a spiritual point of view, there is a dynamic that is subtle, that we need to address and understand in order to bring it to its fullest measure in terms of working with conflict, difficulty, challenges. And I'll illustrate the subtlety, this subtle dynamic with a story, which I tell in business settings a lot. So this is kind of an interesting dynamic because on the one hand, Jimmy was saying about Mindful Hawaii wanting to bring mindfulness into organizational settings and then also spirituality and business. So I'm like, okay, which direction should I go here? So I'll bring in some business stories a little bit to sort of bridge the gap. But this is a story that I tell in organizational settings quite a lot to illustrate the subtlety of this issue of fearlessness. In any case, I've told you so many times, I still get a kick out of it, so none of us. Anyway, so many years ago, now it's almost 10 years, I am fortunate enough to do retreats, teach meditation, etc., etc. Many years ago, I was teaching a retreat up in Vermont, and there was a gentleman there who had started his own business. Thank you very much. No, thank you. And he had gone through the retreat, and he came up to me and goes, I really like this mindful leadership. I've written a book on mindful leadership, blah, blah, blah. He said, oh, I really like this mindful leader thing. I want you to come to my company and teach my executive team about mindful leadership. I said, okay, that's cool, great. So a month or so passes, and this gentleman had started quite a beautiful business in New Jersey, about 450 employees. And it was a sold insurance product, and he started himself. It's a beautiful thing, you know. So in any case, I show up there Monday morning, and at 9 o'clock, I should have seen this coming at that point, but nonetheless, I'm having some coffee with him, and he says, about 15 minutes in, okay, come on in, I want you to meet my executive team. So he opens his door, and he has this beautiful, conference room, yeah, conference room. And sitting around the conference room are these 8 executives, a few women, men, they're all sitting there like this. And it's 9 o'clock, and he comes and he goes, hi, I want to retreat on mindful leadership. I want us all to become mindful leaders. Michael, take it away. And I'm like, it's not even 9:30, and no one's had coffee, and everyone's like, get going, start talking, and then we get it rolling, and the CFO keeps going like this. So about 20 minutes in, he raises his hand, he goes, excuse me. Is there a bottom line to this mindfulness thing? And I said, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked, because there is a bottom line. And rather than me telling you the bottom line, how about if I show it to you? And everybody in the room goes, oh, okay. Now you got our attention. So let me just show you the bottom line, and here it is. So I sat there for about a minute, a little more maybe. And I said to, as maybe I'm saying to you, I said, how was that? How was that? And one gentleman said, and there's a punchline, it's a fun punchline. He says, oh, I was getting really nervous. Very anxious. And the other person said, I thought your presentation was starting to unravel. Why am I telling this story? Is, as I said to them, I said, okay, that's 60 seconds of psychological space. And what did we do? We panicked. We panicked. So the first element of spiritual warriorship is, can we be comfortable in our own skin? Right here, right now. Very simple. We're talking a very simple rule. And it takes courage to notice that we're not. It takes courage. And gentleness, by the way. Get a little technical on this. Normally at this point in this talk I don't get too technical, but I will here for a minute. Is this uneasiness is a background tension that as human beings all of us feel. In Tibetan, the word for it is timuk, T-I-M-U-K. It is a form of, I translate it as cosmic anxiety. And the feeling of the cosmic anxiety is, it's an unspoken question, which is, am I going to be okay? Is this working out? And it has a checking quality to it. Always checking. Checking. Seeking reassurance in a world that offers none. That's panic. And in my tradition, that's referred to as the core gesture of cowardice. Now, being a coward is not necessarily na 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 you are. No, let's admit we're afraid of being human at a basic level. It's okay. I won't go any further on that technical stuff. If you want, you can take my class. No, I'm kidding. But it is an important dynamic that meditation, which we'll get into in a moment, introduces us to very, very directly and very, very quickly. So that's the first element here, is this spiritual warriorship is based upon a fundamental gesture of fearlessness, of our willingness to address this uneasiness about our lives, our simple being who we are. There's many dynamics to this fear. Oh, God, she's still carrying my water.
There's a bottle right there.
Oh,
Whatever you want to do.
oh, thank you.
Just keep talking louder.
Can you hear me back there? Yeah. Okay. So there's several dynamics to this fearlessness, which we won't get into all of them, but I'd like to bring your attention to one which I think is very important. That's another story that I like telling. And normally, my wife isn't here, and she's part of the story, which is cool. Which is why I hate watching the Olympics. Right? It's like, people are like, why? Now, of course, the Olympics are a beautiful thing. You know, young people come there and they're perfecting a certain level of excellence. But the one part of the Olympics that freaks me out is the ice skating. And my wife used to be a gymnast, so she loves watching the gymnastics and the people flipping, you know, they can die. We can die. I don't know if you'd like that. But yeah, they jump and they do things. In any case, the ice skating thing is really scary because you all know this. Everybody has watched it. It starts off with two young 17-year-old people, a boy and a girl. They've spent their entire lives to get to this point. They've worked their butts off. And 54 million people are watching live. And they're on razor blades, on slippery surface. And they're expecting me to watch that easily.
Terrifying.
So a song comes on, and then they do a dance. It's nice, they're in a beautiful uniform, and we all know this. They go all the way to the end of the skating rink, and they start skating like this, backwards, you know? And they have to do, see everyone's shaking their heads already, they have to do the triple thing.
Quadruple now, I think.
Quadruple, triple, dipple, whatever. And they go up, and the person goes around, and if they come down, it goes whoosh, and you go, and if they make it, it's like, okay, I made it through this Olympics. I won't have to do that for another 4 years. I'm happy. And then if they fall, you go, oh, that's Mary, the person who fell at the Olympics for the rest of her life. You know what I mean? But now, why am I telling that story? Is because it illustrates a critical element of fearlessness. These two beautiful people, young people, had chosen to be totally exposed, totally vulnerable in the gesture that they were performing. Now, typically when we think of vulnerability, we think of something we would prefer otherwise. I shouldn't be vulnerable, I should fix it, it's something to be avoided. But from the point of view of spiritual warriorship, vulnerability is power. It is power. These young people, when they chose to do that, they weren't like, I don't want to be vulnerable, I don't like it. They were totally exposed because the core is unconditional confidence. It's a freedom of confidence that one experiences with fearlessness. That one can be confident as a human being and express elegance, beauty, power. So in this expression of spiritual warriorship, vulnerability is power. And one other element to that before I move on to these other principles is, again, this quality of vulnerability as a weakness or an exposure that should be resolved or fixed or avoided. We're saying it's the exact opposite. It's the source of power. And anyone practice the martial arts here? A couple people? I practiced it. I never passed white belt. I was bad at it. Of course, I learned a couple cool things. I was surprised. But when I was studying it, I studied with a Zen master in New York City. You could not study Zen Dharma with him unless you did all the push-ups and all the stuff, and other things. Exercises, katas they were called, all you had to do. But here's the fun part, and I'm Irish, which made it great. He would only teach Dharma in a bar drinking. So, and we'd all go over there, and most of the men and women there were cops, or these were tough men and women, and I was just a kid, and I'd be like, oh great, drinking Misaki. But there was one thing about him, is he would take the same seat in the place where we would all sit and receive teachings, and he would know who was behind him all the time. There was a crowd bar. And he would play with us. He goes, there's 3 people behind us, one has orange pants on, sitting looking at a mirror, and they're having a beer. We're like, how does he do it? So I'm thinking he's like, like has some kind of quick move, or he didn't have glasses, or whatever. I don't know. But here was the point of the story, is when he walked into the room, he was a short fella. He didn't walk in the room, karate man. He just walked in, vulnerable, totally exposed, but from a powerful place that he could read everything that was going on, just like this. Just like this. His vulnerability is highly sensitive. You can read the situation, it can touch it. It's alert, it's awake, it's clear, it's compassionate, it's tough. So this man, who was a Zen Roshi, he could pick up every signal in the room before I even noticed I was in the room. So this vulnerability is powerful in many ways, one of which is being in touch with reality, rather than strategizing our way through it. Okay? All right, so a few more things. My wife never comes to any of my talks. Now she's stuck being on it. So cool. And it's getting videotaped.
Every word.
So the other element of warriorship is that it's a spiritual path. It's not just a sort of a spiritual gesture or a spiritual goal or a spiritual accomplishment. It's a spiritual path. And there are many dynamics to the path. And I want to bring your attention to a few, and then to the fundamental gesture of the path. The first one is a kind of a story. Is it a story? No, it's whatever. So there was this research by a guy named Killingsworth. Now it's very common if you're in the mindfulness circuit, Killingsworth's research is quoted quite a lot. But Killingsworth is a social researcher from Harvard who's done a lot of research on the human experience as it occurs. Most research up until just recently isn't as it occurs, it's what happened before, collect the data, try to describe it and predict. Now we can study it as it occurs. In any case, one of the highly quoted results of his study is that the average human being, which many of us are here in the room, average human beings, I know I'm one of them, on average, human beings spend around 48% of our time thinking about something other than what we're experiencing. Has anyone had that experience? So about 50%, we'll just use one number, about 50% of the time. Right? Now, the 50% of the time, let's see. Yeah. So the 50% of the time when we're thinking about something other than what we're doing, right? 80% of that time, what we're thinking about is more distressing than the experience we're actually having. Conclusion, dime drops, we're actually authoring the very distress we're seeking to avoid. Now, the Buddha told us that 2,500 years ago, but science would be like, Buddha. But now they have research, they go, hey, that's an interesting idea. So part of the warrior path is to how to stop kidding yourself. How to stop kidding yourself. Ourselves. How do we stop kidding ourselves about the actual experience that we're having? So, another story, if I may. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. But, there's many reasons why we want to stop kidding ourselves. But there is a profound one, which I'll illustrate with a little story. So I'm very honored to be in this situation, to be asked to chat with you. It's an honor. And on occasion, I'm interviewed by folks for articles or whatever. And I guess it's almost 6 years ago now. I got a call from a woman from a newspaper who wanted to interview me on leadership and mindfulness. Normally, that would be done over the phone. Nowadays, it's done on Zoom. Everything's easy, blah, 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 blah. In this case, she lived with her mom. And I'm like, why don't we have a cup of coffee at the Starbucks? It's like, this is cool. So we meet up at the Starbucks, and we're having a fun time, having a little chat, having coffee. And toward the end, she goes, okay, could you just give me one thing that when a leader does meditation, what is one thing that she can do? Just one thing. It was similar to the CFO thing. And I said, oh, well, there's a lot of things. I don't know, let me see. Oh, here's one. If you meditate, you can tell the difference between a thought and an experience. And she was drinking her coffee. What does that mean? I said, the difference between a thought and an experience. And I said, like, for example, you probably think you're sitting in Starbucks right now, right? She goes, yeah, sitting in Starbucks. I said, no, you're not. Starbucks is a thought. You're having an experience right now, and it's not Starbucks. She's like, I said, here's another one. You probably think you're drinking coffee right now, right? She goes, no, coffee's a thought. You're actually having an experience. And she went, oh, coffee is a thought. It's a word. It is an experience before you name it. That's the introduction. That's the doorway to enlightenment. As the door opens, that's how you pass toward, get closer. So we're not just talking about practicalities here. We're talking about becoming fully realized human beings. This ability to stop fooling ourselves about our experience. Another thing about the path, and I think this is really important, is typically when we have a spiritual journey, we want to go, this is what you ought to do. You ought to get on the spiritual journey that Michael Carroll thinks is cool. It could be called Buddhism, or it could be called Catholicism, whatever you want to call it. In the case of warriorship, it's almost the exact opposite. there's no trying to convert anybody to get on to your boat or your bus. It's more about inspiring the dignity that is already in the other person. And that's a key element of warriorship, rather than religion, or dogma, or doctrine. This is about inspiring the best in others, versus inflicting your point of view on others. That's part of the path. So how do you inspire your world? And it could be as simple as a beautiful meal, or as powerful as opening a hospital. And from the point of view of the Bodhisattva, which is very similar to the warrior, it doesn't really matter. They're both the same. So it's about inspiring the best in others and seeing the dignity in others versus inflicting your version of dignity in others. That's a path. I mean, I think that sounds great. I'm going to get on board with that. Oops, you already got on board with it. It's hard work to love the world that way. Just a couple more. Okay, just one more, and then we'll get into the final, or the primary gesture of the warrior. One of the rules of the journey, and there are many, not rules, suggestions. One of the primary suggestions is don't believe it. Don't believe anything. Don't believe it. So I can say to you, listen, I can tell you, if you train your mind in a particular way, and you are able to distinguish, you escort your attention back to the present moment, become familiar with the experience here, you'll discover something that is vast, timeless, unbelievably blissful, unspeakably profound, beyond anything you could ever imagine. And it can linger and inform the rest of your life with joy, dignity, and compassion. Sound pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. Don't believe it. Do not believe that. Do not. Either you experience it or you don't. Either you experience it or you don't. So the journey is about a direct, unmistakable experience versus some kind of wishful thinking. And the beauty of it, at least the way I've been trained, is I've been very fortunate to have met some really seriously realized beings. And when I was young particularly, it was like, I want to be like that. Can't wait. I remember having a conversation with Traleg Rinpoche, actually. And it was a couple of us Vajrayana students with him. We were talking with him. And one of the Vajrayana students said to Traleg Rinpoche, you know, this whole Mahamudra thing, okay? I've been practicing it my whole life. And it keeps, 1 minute there's wakefulness, you're glimpsing wakefulness, and the next minute you're not. I mean, come on. I mean, is there a way that we can sort of stabilize this? And Rinpoche looks at him and he goes, why? What's the problem with glimpsing enlightenment? Is there a problem with glimpsing enlightenment? The reason why I'm saying that is, as we journey along here, our experience of vastness, whatever it is worthy. If it's the smell of perfume, or a lightning strike, or you suddenly discover that you're a mountain in the middle of nowhere, whatever, doesn't matter. It's worthy. It's worthy. So don't believe anything, but know that your experience is worthy. All right, so the final, in this particular tradition of warriorship, there's a fundamental gesture that underlies the entire journey, which I have always found bizarre. The whole thing is filled with cosmic jokes. This is the best. This is one of the best ones. The punchline. It's like, okay, we're going to go on a journey. Let's get going. How do we get there? By sitting still. I thought I was going somewhere. No, you're not going anywhere. What? Yeah. So this practice of sitting still for extended periods of time is the fundamental gesture of a warrior. In this tradition, this may not be true for the Lakota tradition, it may not be true for the Yaqui tradition, it may not be true for the wonderful tradition here that I'm just now slowly beginning to learn about, but in this particular tradition, this gesture of sitting still for extended periods of time is the fundamental gesture that one does, frankly, for the rest of your life. And you do a lot of it. You do a lot of it. So what I would like to do is give that meditation instruction, and then we can sit for maybe just 5 minutes or so, and then we can have some discussion. Does that sound good? Okay. So the first, in order to understand this practice, now mindfulness is very mainstreamed, as I'm sure everyone here knows. And on the one hand, that's really good news. I think it's fantastic. On the other hand, it has its funny elements to it, right? So you have, like, you know, mindful milkshake drinking, you know, it's like all kinds of things. So what I would like to do is give you an instruction that is very conservative. It goes back to the original yogic gesture of the Buddha. This is what the yogis were doing when it brought about this fruitional element, which is called enlightenment. In order to sort of understand that, one must first reflect on effort. On effort. Normally, when we think of effort or want to apply effort, we are trying to achieve something. Right? It's like I'm going to work hard to get somewhere, which is, generally speaking, I just call it the effort of getting somewhere. Right? And that's understandable. We all work very hard in our lives. Nowadays, we're not only trying to get somewhere, we're trying to get there fast. You know, it's really quite remarkable, given all the toys and tools we have. And, you know, I love the illustration. You turn your computer on. I still do it. My wife sees this all the time. I have such impatience with this. You know, I want my computer to work, man. And you turn it on and go, 13 seconds, that's okay. 14 seconds is like, come on, you know, it's saying everything. Stop. She's really bad at the stoplights. We sit at the stoplight, and there's a car in front of us. And we sit there, and she waits for the red light to turn to green. And it turns to green, and it can't even be 1.5 seconds, and she goes, they're looking at their phone. They're looking at their phone. So, we all understand this feeling of wanting to get somewhere fast, right? And nowadays, it really is woven into us. And the third element of what we typically see as effort is, not only do we want to get somewhere and get there fast, when we get there, we want to be someone else. We want to be skinnier. We want to be more loved. We want to be richer. We want to be more tan or whatever, younger. Gee, I'm 70. I can't believe it. I still feel like I'm 12 in my mind. So this effort that we're used to is wanting to get somewhere, become someone else, get there fast, and to a great degree that's a very worthy effort. It's not a bad thing. You take a young woman who works really hard, goes to university, studies, graduates, she's a doctor, and is able to care for us. It's a beautiful thing. She worked hard, got somewhere, became someone else. In this case, we are working with a different form of effort. We are not trying to achieve anything. In the West, that's very hard for us. It's a different form of effort. We're not trying to get somewhere, we're trying to be somewhere. It's a different form of effort. This effort has grown flabby. And if you're a new meditator, you find out how flabby it is within the first 18 seconds. You know, you go to your meditation retreat, going away for a meditation retreat to reduce stress. And you get in, and they ring the bell, and you go. And then 18 seconds, it's like, stress starts going up. From the warrior point of view, that stress is welcome. That's welcome. That's the energy of this unwillingness to have the experience that we're having and to chase after a preferred experience, which we need to gently dismantle over time. So the first element I want to bring your attention to is we're not trying to achieve anything at all here. We're trying to become familiar with the experience that we're having. You will find, now that I'm 70, I can let cats out of the bag. Back when I was young, I wouldn't be allowed to do this, but I don't care anymore. Yeah, the reason being is, one of the things you'll find is when you do this practice, you cannot achieve enlightenment. It's impossible to achieve enlightenment. That is really good news, by the way. You know, that sounds bad news. It's good news. All you can do is express it. So this practice is first dismantling the impulse to achieve, to get somewhere else, to chase preferred experiences, and to become familiar with the actual experience you're having, which is tremendously boring. It's good news. So, with that said, I will now give the instruction, and we can do it for a little bit. When did you give the instruction?
Okay. Hi. Where am I? So I'm really happy to be here, and I will just start with the body form of this meditation, and then the breath and the mental chatter. So just find yourself in your seat in a way where your sit bones feel solidly on the chair or the ground, whatever you're sitting on, and feel your feet into the ground and into the floor. And your spine is actually erect, tall, noble, almost as if there's a string going all the way from the bottom up to the ceiling. Yet you're settling down into your sit bones and into the floor with your feet. Your spine is tall, erect, but not hard. The front of your chest is open and soft. Shoulders can be relaxed down. You might find that your jaw will relax. Your mouth may open a little bit. You can take your index finger and put it right here on your chin and just push it a little bit. You'll notice that the back of your neck elongates. So you're tall like a king or queen in a throne, yet you're settled into the weight, into the chair and the earth. The palms are just on your thighs, wherever's comfortable, grounded. Your eyes are open. So your eyes are open with a soft gaze, down a little bit, not focusing on anything in particular, but a soft gaze. This is a Sukhasana pose. It's resting, perfectly balanced, and grounded on the earth. Just find your breath. The sensation of your breath wherever you find it. You might feel it on your nostrils or your lips. You might feel it in your torso, your exhale or inhale. Just allow your awareness to find your breath. Continuing your soft gaze, your grounded posture. Place your awareness with your breath. Allow your awareness to rest with your breath. And if you notice that you might be thinking, or your awareness has slipped away from your breath, bring your awareness back to your breath and follow your exhale out, letting everything go. When you notice that you're thinking about something else, you can even label it thinking, and bring your awareness back to your breath. Being with your out breath and letting everything go. So we'll practice that now. Thank you.
So do you have any questions about the instruction or observations about your experience?
Still sleeping.
Michael, I'm getting bladder anxiety for you. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a happy guy.
Did you feel that was clear? Did you have any questions about the form of the meditation?
I wondered about keeping your eyes open. And
Okay.
the significance of that or not, because mostly I close my eyes. So
What was the difference for you trying it this way?
I was like weirdly aware of how much I blink, I guess.
You were like focused on.
Like my eye, like every time I blinked, I was like, am I blinking a lot? And then I was like,
Why are my eyes
like,
open?
are my eyes okay? Should I blink more?
Yeah.
And then oh, I'm thinking about blinking.
So it really gave you something that.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't want to say fixated, but like it kept coming up. I was like, I never really had my eyes open. Like,
Okay.
just having it, just noticing a lot
Yeah.
about my eyes.
That is a big question often with this form about your eyes open or closed. Would anybody like to comment on their experience of what it was like to have your eyes open if you were someone that closes them often, or vice versa? Yeah.
The symmetry of the light source.
Uh-huh.
And it's disturbing having all the lights over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Even when it's closed, it wasn't so bad, but I couldn't keep my eyes open.
You couldn't keep your eyes
Oh, for
open.
about a third of the time, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Sometimes when you're very used to closing your eyes, when we give meditation instructions, it's like I watch people just. I'm like, eyes open. Just try it for 5 minutes. Just try it. See what it's like for you. Just in my experience of this for myself is that, and I think this form of meditation is that we are warriors in the world, and we're actually meditating for our lives, to experience our lives fully. And so we don't really walk around the world with our eyes closed. And it is a meditation where everything is welcome. Everything. Your anger, the light, your tears, your laughter, your itch, scratch, text, your body, the cough. Everything's welcome, and we can accommodate everything. All of our senses are awake and alive and there. In this very powerful, open, strong, compassionate posture. So we're practicing being fully awake here, stabilizing it in our bodies. So that's the theoretical thing about the eyes open, or my experience of it. But you can also try it. Try closing your eyes and opening them. When you close your eyes, you're kind of getting a nice, little cozy. Like you said, sleepy, and that happens to me. And then when you open your eyes, it's a little more challenging. It is. So
I'll give you also a technical answer on this. So this is west of Persia, or east of Persia. There's only 2 types of meditation. 2. One is form-based meditation. Form-based meditation uses a technique in order to achieve something. Okay? And there are many form-based meditations. So you could use a mantra, you could use a visualization, you could use body movements like Tai Chi, which is meant to bring vigor of one's chi alive. Right? You could do Tong Lin, which, if anyone's familiar, that generates loving kindness for others. And there are literally thousands of form-based meditations that use techniques in order to bring something about. Everything from taming one's anger to creating an environment, whatever. All good stuff. Second, well, if you do get, what chooses, make sure you get good instruction, whatever form you want to do. The second type of meditation is what is called formless meditation. Formless meditation uses little or no technique at all. It doesn't seek to achieve anything at all. Formless meditation looks like this. No technique. This form of mindfulness awareness meditation that you received is a formless meditation. Uses slight technique, escorting the attention, taking a posture, etc., but relatively little bit of technique. Closing the eyes is a technique. God bless, it's fine. Particularly if you want to manage stress, close your eyes. If you want to do what we call a deep body, what do you call it? Scan, body scanning. Very powerful way to relax. However, from the point of view of this meditation, you will notice if you do your mindfulness meditation with your eyes closed, it's very hard to go the other direction. It's a very heavy-handed technique. It would be like going like this. Well, I think I'll also do this. I don't want to hear, I don't want to say. There's whatever sense I can turn off, which is a technique. That's not a put down, it's just trying to make the distinction between formless meditation and formless meditation. Okay? Any other questions just generally, or any other things you want to talk about or bring up? Yes?
Of the books that you've written, which one reflects best what you've spoken about today? I'd like to order.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
It's a whole list, huh?
Yeah. It's a compendium.
Yes,
You really need
exactly.
to, and they make great Christmas gifts. There's 4 books. The first one is called Awake at Work, which is kind of the basic. And that one sells a lot, and I would recommend it. It's the basic principles. The second one is called Mindful Leader, which is really the Bodhisattva path as it applies to leadership in organizational settings. And the Fearless at Work is more advanced principles of cowardice, and how to skillfully work in complex conflict. And then the fourth one is a spoken book called Mindful Leadership Training, which tries to bring them all together. But I gotta say, if I was on an island and I had to read my stuff over and over again, I'd probably, I don't know, what would you?
It feels like Fearless at Work is the one that you spoke about today.
Oh, yeah, from that point of
She
view.
wants to know about today.
Oh, yeah, from
The
that.
warrior.
Yeah, Fearless at Work. Fearless at Work. I could have just said that. Yeah. Right. Yes.
Yeah, Michael, you speak a lot about fearlessness. Would you say that love is the absence of fear, or peace is the absence of fear?
Ah, okay. Well, I would say this, that there is the situation of being human. When you take the context of infinite space, I mean, you may have noticed there's not a lot of human beings around. You may think there's a lot of human beings around, but not if you take infinite space into account. This is a very, 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 very rare situation that's going on right here. And you may notice that maybe this quality of wakefulness that we're experiencing right now can only happen intimately. The universe can only wake up intimately. It can only wake up as a Bobby or a Mary. It can't wake up as a, I am big. You know, it only can wake up intimately, like this. This intimacy is shocking. And in the Nyingma school, there's an initial panic about this wakefulness. Whoa. That it wakes up this intimately. That panic evolves into karma and a whole range of panic-oriented patterns of self-deception. Well, from the point of view of love, is the quality of this intimacy is that it's open, it's exposed. And that openness has a tenderness toward it, to it. It's tender. It's tender. You notice how being who you are is tender? Has anyone not noticed being who you are is tender? Right? That tenderness is sort of an expression of, from a tantric point of view, a cosmic impulse toward unconditional love. And that it has to take the chance of getting confused in order for it to come to its fullest measure. So, dismantling one's panic gently in order to experience this tenderness to its fullest measure is, I would say, a central dynamic of warriorship.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Earlier you said something about being afraid of being human. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that's what, yeah,
Kind of.
I think that's what we were getting at, is that there's a quality. I mean, I just speak for myself. You know, when I was a young boy, I was very fortunate. My parents were very kind to me. And by any conventional notion, I lived a privileged life. I'm a white male, living in a beautiful world, having parents who loved me. I went to great schools. I was harmed a little bit, but nothing all that egregious, you know, blah, blah, blah. I've lived a good life. But what every one of us here has experienced, either early on or later on, what's going on here? Something's off. Maybe you lose your mother when you're 12 to cancer, or you get sexually abused by a neighbor, or you find you have a disease, whatever. Everyone here knows what we're talking about, right? And that quality of, oops, makes us go, I'm not sure I can pull this off. I'm not sure I can do this. So in order for me to do this, I better get a lawyer, or I better get a gun, or I better get an extra bottle of whiskey, or something, because I'm not sure I can pull this off. That's being afraid of being human.
Thank you.
No, it sounds like you're talking about the deeper problems of what's going on in America today.
But you know, I always think that, and then I think, well, these teachings were written 2,500 years ago. How did that, you know, what is
It's
it?
about being human.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So the question is, you know, are we getting in touch with our humanness, or?
I would say that things are getting worse, and they're going to get a lot worse very quickly, very soon.
I was reading, I just got the book, by the way. Fareed Zakaria, he's written a book about revolution. And I encourage you to try and read it if you want to. But he's talking about what you're talking about too, you know, in his own way. And you know, you got all kinds of systemic revolutions going on, we're saying. But the one thing that we are not in touch with is the human revolution that needs to take place. And one of them is, how can we connect to each other as human beings? And even Brooks, what's his name, or your favorite person? But
John Brooks in the New York
David.
Times. David Brooks.
David Brooks.
He's
Because
a
David
great
Brooks
writer.
is
Great
is
writer.
talking about that now, more often. And I think it's a very serious problem. And this is why our communities are disengaging, if you will, and we're not bringing people together. And it's a very serious problem. And I think here in Mindful Hawaii, we have to take stock of that problem, and we need to do something about that. And we agree.
The reason why I'm saying it's getting worse, it's going to get worse quickly and much worse, is because of our young people's experience of artificiality. Is the way modern materialism is designing the experience is that young people are increasingly preferring an artificial experience over an authentic experience. And it's being sold to them as medicine, not anesthesia. And that's very powerful and very dangerous, because an authentic experience has to do with something raw and immediate and powerfully human, whereas an artificial experience keeps giving you the impression that you're about to have exactly what you want. And that's why mindfulness is extremely important, because it introduces you to the reality of being a body, synchronized presence on a planet in the middle of this. And luckily, more and more young people are interested. So it's not as if it's not there. And I think our responsibility is to create environments where young people feel welcome and capable of engaging. You know?
Creating the space.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Michael and Susanna?
I don't know if this is fair to ask you, but Jimmy had mentioned that we were, and has probably spoken to you about the idea of a Mindful Warrior project here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an effort to create an engaged community practice that's something slightly different than what we do here in this meeting, where we come together and often we have a speaker and we think, but we don't spend as much time being with each other. So part of what we were imagining doing was supporting people who wanted to be fearless about promoting and entering the world from a mindful place and being leaders, and inviting others into their human-to-human connection, taking mindfulness, as you say, out of this and off the cushion and into the community. I've been intrigued by the fact that, you know, many of us participated in the Wisdom Seats beautiful training on Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior.
Back then.
Right, back then.
That got,
And-
all these people came to that.
Yeah, it was
Thank
great.
you for
And
coming
you were
along.
there, yeah.
And we were there, and then we turned around and you so generously shared your videos, and we had a small community of us go through those videos
Oh, okay.
and have our own kind of study group, read the book, watched the videos, had conversations. And out of that has come a long-standing wish to sort of take that somewhere further.
Mm-hmm.
We're also familiar with Margaret Wheatley's writings about this, and one of the things that's sort of fundamentally different between what Margaret is advocating and what Jimmy and even we had talked about, which was our idea of mindful warriorship was to create an inclusive place where everyone had access to the opportunity to be part of this and to play that role, to take on the yoke of responsibility to inspire, right, around mindfulness. And Margaret talks about the fact that this mindful warriorship is not for everyone. It's for the few who want to be that fearless and do that hard work of stepping into that role. So there's kind of it feels to me like there's not an elitism, but a sort of self-selection of the few versus an idea that we're holding that this could be a role for the many. And I was wondering if you had any particular thoughts about the reality of our intention to make this a role that anyone could step into if they wanted to stretch in that way.
Yeah, well, I think this is an important question. And I'd love to hear what my wife wants to say about it too. I'll say something first. I'll just say, I'm a Tantric Buddhist. And want to talk about elitism? You know, we sit around in caves, you know, visualizing ourselves with stuff, and you know, I wouldn't wish it on you. You do not want to do this. So, in terms of us doing stuff that is not like inclusive, it's not designed to be exclusive, but it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? And period. On the other hand, I have a problem with that because my style, as I think you're noticing, is let's all have a good time. Let's not all have all these little corners. I'm over here, you're over there. And part of what we did with the wisdom seat was very deliberately create an environment where everyone's invited to take the seat, the wisdom seat. And what that was about was in our mid-Atlantic area, you had students of Khenpo Rinpoche, Punlap Rinpoche, Traleg Rinpoche, Khatar Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche. I mean, I can go on. Well, they all have Rinpoches, but not all of them. There's some that aren't Rinpoches. But it was just all, we said everyone's welcome. Come on along, let's work together, help one another. And it's gone quite nicely in that we just invite people to practice together and enjoy being a community together. And I, as I've grown older, I think that's the direction to go. And I would encourage you to think about how to make a broad invitation. However, it has its own problems, right? But one last statement about with Wheatley is the way I've been trained is all of us, my wife included, we have put a lot of hours of practice. I mean, I've done many solitary retreats. And you know, you're not allowed to say that publicly because it's bullshit. Like, oh, you're so special. But nonetheless, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, a lot of practice. And I don't think that's like necessary. Everybody can practice and enjoy themselves. But if you did want to get trained in the manner in which I've been trained, and my wife has been trained, you know, 30 days, 8 hours a day. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times. A lot. 30 days, 8 hours a day. Practice. So, but I don't know if that helped. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I know, yeah. The two things that came to my mind were like absolutely welcoming and why not? Because, so as a therapist, I work with a lot of people, and if I'm just there and I inspire them to find that their openness, their good heart, and their fearlessness, it's fine. And everybody has that. So I think that's wonderful. But then it's up to the leaders or the people that are organizing it to maintain a level of boundaries and container where this is what this is. And through your presence, don't be afraid to, this is what this is. Because sometimes people really want that really nice, cozy. Anyway, it can get complicated, but I think for you as leaders, just to keep trying to find that kind of mission statement in the ground of it, that it is based in meditation, and it's difficult, like Margaret Wheatley's saying, it's hard, this is not easy, it's not just woo, but also know that everybody, from whatever walk of life, everybody's included, and they already have that within them, and they have to discover that. So I think it's kind of the job of, if you're going to do it, the leaders to kind of help bring the best out of anybody that walks through the door to discover that within a nice container and boundaries.
I would say,
Which you guys are going to figure out as it happens.
if you're going to make mistakes, make mistakes with opening up, not mistakes with closing.
Closing up.
Oh, yeah, before you, yeah, but you'll know when you'll have to start to make a little.
Little boundary.
Well, so really, actually, it's not really about, so boundaries are helpful. It's like I work with 2 and 3-year-olds, and you don't go, hey, go to the store, get something, the world's your oyster, go. No, they're scared to death. They don't, it's too big. People need to feel that they know the parameters, so they can kind of find in a relaxed place, they can have the safety, quote unquote, because it's to be able to have the quiet to find themselves, right? So you need to have that. So I don't think that's a bad thing. It's actually very helpful. It's like 2-year-olds. You need to have them feel, then they can be free
I
and
appreciate
find
that.
themselves. If that makes sense, it's like kind of the opposite of
does.
it. It's not
It really
rules, it's a way to inspire and help having those parameters.
I think that's very sound advice.
So you'll find out what
Thank
those
you.
are as you go.
Thank you.
And wouldn't you consider that everyone is a potential leader?
Yeah.
From that perspective
Yeah,
of finding yourself, even if you're not specifically going out to business and government, you're just living your life
Yeah.
as you authentically are. You're making a huge impact.
right. And that's kind of Michael's books and the ground of all that, right? That everybody's a leader
Well,
in their life.
the issue in the mindful leader is that we are all hardwired as leaders. In leadership, if you look at it as inspiring the best in others, that can be done by anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I'll tell you, in corporations, you know, and I know at the senior level, they go, please, could you just lead at all levels?
Yeah.
Take the move, please, don't wait for us. So it's beyond leadership, corporate leadership. This has to do with that we can inspire the best in each other, anywhere, anytime, any place, and that's the core gesture of leadership.
It's not top down.
Yeah, it's inside.
When there's a saying of you're holding and you're building wildflowers, but you're watering them and you're kind of holding the space for those wildflowers to grow. So that stance is the leader. We all are. But if you're trying to do this, that's another way of looking at it. Not top down, bringing the wildflowers up, and whoever walks in the door has a blossom.
Yeah, it's such an interesting challenge in Hawaii because as we want to promote people to be a leader in bringing their own presence, right? I think I heard you say once that, warriorship is the art of maintaining the presence, and being unafraid of being present. But there's such a humility that when you invite people to be in a leadership role, they're like, oh, no, me. There's
Right.
there's a high value on humility. And while there's also a high value on servant leadership, to say to someone, would you like to be in that role and be of support in the places where you live and work with this sense of responsibility,
Right.
then it's yes, because I want to serve, and no, who am I? I don't know enough, I'm not trained enough, I haven't had all the experiences.
Right.
So we're kind of sitting in this
Exactly.
how to get a handle on this idea without making people feel like they're being asked to play a role they don't feel prepared to play, and yet inviting people into leadership in a significant way in community. So it's just an interesting challenge.
You got it right
The
on.
key there is atmosphere. Creating an atmosphere where people feel welcome and they can take a chance.
Yeah.
And that requires kindness, enrichment, and it's not easy. So don't mess it up.
Already done.
Or couldn't you also just invite people to the training to broaden their perspective as human beings, and then at some point, through the training, invite people to leadership because they're feeling more confident about themselves as their authentic.
Well, I think that would just be one of the many doorways.
Yeah.
One of the many, many doorways. Come to the training, or maybe someone just comes and likes doing flower arranging. Anyway, good luck.
I think it's
Thank
a
you.
really good idea here because of the diversity.
Thank you.
That's my.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think people will move out when they feel ready to do that.
Yeah.
And I think when they're developing themselves, just by the change that's occurring within them, they invite people to come around.
Yeah.
there. You know, and those are ways in which it will happen. So it's not about, oh, A, B, C, D, and then you find a D result, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a human process, if you will, that's geared upon discovery and transformation, and then moving out if you want to. But if they want to, we can help them do that too, you know, help them to organize. We have a lot of experience with that. Right, Dennis? It's another politician over there.
Good, well, thank you.
Thank
For your
you.
time.
Thank you so much.